Rain lashed down, mirroring the storm inside me. 3 days. 3 agonizing days since Lucky, my golden retriever, had vanished. His leash, still hanging by the door, was a constant painful reminder. Flyers plastered on every lamppost, every corner, mocked me with their hopeful faces. Where could he be? The phone call came as I was about to give in to despair. A gruff voice, hesitant. He'd seen Lucky in the old abandoned factory on the edge of town. Hope surged, a fragile flame in the downpour. I grabbed my coat, the worn leather heavy with the weight of my desperation. Find Lucky. That was all that mattered. The drive was a blur. Each splash of water against the windshield felt like a countdown. The factory loomed, a skeletal silhouette against the stormy sky. A shiver ran down my spine, a prickle of unease. But I pushed it aside. Lucky was in there. I had to find him. The air grew heavy as I stepped inside, thick with the smell of decay and something else. Incense? A low hum vibrated through the floor, a discordant melody that set my teeth on edge. My heart hammered against my ribs. The building felt alive, a breathing entity with secrets tucked into every dark corner. Lucky? My voice echoed in the vast emptiness. The only response was the drip, drip of water seeping through the cracked roof. Each step forward felt like an intrusion, a violation of something sacred and forbidden. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, taking on monstrous shapes in my peripheral vision. Then I saw them. Candles flickered in the distance, casting an eerie glow on the far wall. Silhouettes moved, their forms shifting and swaying in the flickering light. Fear tightened its grip, but the thought of Lucky, lost and alone, fueled my courage. I pressed on, deeper into the heart of the unknown. The chanting grew louder as I approached, weaving itself into the rhythm of the dripping water. A sea of faces swam into view, illuminated by hundreds of flickering candles. They wore simple robes, their expressions serene, almost trance-like. In the center, a figure stood on a raised platform, arms outstretched, leading the chant. My eyes scanned the crowd, searching for a flash of golden fur, a familiar bark. No Lucky, just a sea of strangers, their eyes fixed on their leader. I felt a hand on my arm, a gentle touch that sent a jolt through my tense muscles. I turned, ready to fight, to flee, but the woman standing before me held no malice in her eyes, only a calm curiosity. "Peace be upon you," she whispered, her voice soft as the falling rain. "What brings you to our sanctuary?" Her eyes, the color of warm honey, held mine with unsettling intensity. I stammered, unsure how to explain my presence, the lost dog, the growing unease that clawed at my gut. Her name was Alara. She spoke with a quiet strength that belied the fragility of her frame. She listened patiently as I explained about Lucky, my voice echoing strangely in the cavernous space. When I finished, she smiled, a slow, reassuring curve of her lips. "He is safe," she assured me. "He found his way to us. We will help you find him." Over the next few hours, Alara guided me through the labyrinthine halls, her hand resting lightly on my arm. The fear that had gnawed at me began to subside, replaced by a strange sense of peace. We talked, about everything and nothing. Her touch, her words were like a balm on my frayed nerves. She spoke of the community, their search for enlightenment, their connection to something greater than themselves. Her words resonated with a truth that I couldn't quite grasp, but it felt comforting nonetheless. For the first time since Lucky's disappearance, I felt a glimmer of hope, not just for finding my dog but for something more, something I couldn't define. Alara led me to a large hall, its walls adorned with intricate murals. In the center, a circular platform made of smooth, dark stone pulsed with an unseen energy. The chanting had reached a fever pitch, a hypnotic rhythm that vibrated through my very bones. Alara turned to me, her eyes shining with an almost unbearable intensity. "This is where we commune," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the chanting. "This is where we find our true selves." She stepped closer, her hand finding mine. Her touch sent a shiver down my spine, a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Stay with me," she pleaded, her voice laced with urgency. "Witness the truth." They gathered around the platform, their chanting reaching a crescendo. Alara stepped onto the stone, her body bathed in an ethereal light. The chanting ceased. A hush fell over the crowd, thick with anticipation. Then, Alara threw back her head and screamed, a raw, primal sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality. But it wasn't Alara's cry that chilled me to the bone, It was the sight of her hand, bathed in the strange light, transforming, shifting. Where delicate fingers had been, there were now claws, sharp, obsidian claws. This was not a transformation. It was something else entirely, something monstrous. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. This was madness. Alara, the woman who had comforted me, who had touched my soul, was a creature of nightmare. But even as the fear threatened to consume me, another emotion burned brighter, a desperate need to protect her. "Alara!" I shouted, my voice hoarse with terror and confusion. "Get down from there!" My words were swallowed by the gasps of the crowd. Alara, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anguish, looked at me, her lips forming words I couldn't hear. The figure on the platform, the leader, turned towards me, his eyes cold and reptilian bored into mine. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. "The ritual must be completed," he boomed, his voice laced with an ancient power. "The sacrifice must be made." My blood ran cold. Sacrifice. They couldn't. They wouldn't. I had to get to Alara, to protect her from this madness, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I charged towards the platform, dodging grasping hands, their touch burning like ice. The leader's eyes widened in surprise as I scrambled onto the platform. He lunged, but I was faster. I slammed him against the stone, the impact echoing through the chamber. He crumpled to the ground, groaning. I turned to Alara, relief flooding through me. But it was a fleeting victory. She stood frozen, her eyes filled with a terror I had never witnessed before. Her gaze darted between me and something behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding against my ribs. A dark figure loomed, its features obscured by a heavy hood. In its hand, it held a gleaming blade. Before I could react, the figure lunged, the blade flashing in the flickering candlelight. I cried out, reaching for Alara, but it was too late. The blade found its mark, burying itself deep in her chest. Alara's eyes met mine, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within them. Betrayal, love, despair. Then the light faded, replaced by a chilling emptiness. She crumpled to the ground, her blood staining the smooth stone a horrifying crimson. The world spun, a sickening carousel of horror and disbelief. I cradled her lifeless body in my arms, the warmth of her blood a stark contrast to the icy grip of death that tightened around my heart. The hooded figure vanished into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. The crowd, their faces etched with shock and fear, parted, whispering amongst themselves. Sacrifice, angel's blood. Their words washed over me, meaningless in the face of my grief. The leader, his face twisted in rage, struggled to his feet. "You fool!" he spat, his voice laced with venom. "You were not meant to interfere. Her blood, it was the key to our salvation." He lunged at me, but I swatted him aside like an annoying insect. Nothing mattered anymore. Alara was gone. As the police stormed the factory, chaos erupting around me, I clung to Alara's body, her name a broken whisper on my lips. She had sacrificed herself for me. But why? What truth had she died to protect? The answer, when it finally came, was more shocking, more devastating than I could have ever imagined. The police found Alara's necklace clutched in my hand, a simple silver chain with a curious pendant, a single iridescent feather. "This is no ordinary feather," the detective explained, his voice grave. "It belongs to a rare, almost mythical bird, a creature of legend." He went on to explain that Alara wasn't part of the cult. She was their prisoner, a being of immense power they believed held the key to their twisted desires. She had infiltrated them, trying to stop them from within. And I, a hapless stranger searching for his lost dog, had stumbled into the middle of it all. Lucky was found, safe and sound, hiding in the factory's old boiler room. But his joyful barks were a hollow symphony in the face of my grief. Alara was gone, an angel they called her, a being of light trapped in a cage of darkness. And I, the one who had dared to love her, was left with nothing but the ghost of her touch and the echo of her sacrifice. The factory is silent now, a tomb of broken promises and shattered dreams. I visit sometimes, drawn back to the place where I found her, lost her, loved her. The wind whispers her name through the broken windows, a constant reminder of the love we shared, a love that bloomed in the darkness and died with the dawn. The search for Lucky led me to Alara, but it was a journey that cost me my heart.